What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Bitcoin and Markets. My name is Ansel Lindner. Happy Friday out there. We are going to wrap up the week with some breaking news in Bitcoin. We have stuff to talk about. Tether FUD, that'll probably come at the end. Brics update, they're doing a new currency. Microsoft, read through their statement that I saw today. Talk a little bit update on ETF options and look at the charts. Wrap up the week, head into the weekend. All right, so let's share the screen and jump right into it. So bitcoinandmarkets.com, this is where I drop all my stuff. Today I spent a lot of time going through old live streams and porting them over to the podcast. So they're going to be coming out once a day. Try to get caught up here on all of the podcasts, get them out for people. That's one of the most common things I'm asked out there when people see me going live or they see one of my tweets. They say, hey, I used to listen to your podcast all the time. Do you keep your podcast up? And there's periods where I don't keep that feed very fresh. So I'm trying to keep it fresh, keep everything from the live streams, even though there's no like charts and stuff. You got to come to the live stream to see the charts, but try to keep that as fresh as I can. And also put out this macro minute, euro dollar to Bitcoin, a new parallel path. I jumped off of this tweet from Jeff Schneider and went into his points, very much like my points on Bitcoin as well. He just does not use the same logic for some reason applied to Bitcoin and applied to as he applies to gold. So I walk through some of that as well. Okay, so that is the website. You guys can sign up for the free email list there, or you can sign up to support the show. I appreciate everyone that supports because this is a listener supported show. I mean, I don't do any ads. I wouldn't be able to do this if you guys didn't support over there on bitcoinandmarkets.com. All right, where do we want to go first? Let's talk about Microsoft. And so let me pull this up, pull up the right tweet here. Now, this is not where I first saw this. This is just the tweet that I found with this copy of this proposal. So this is what came up as the proposal for Microsoft shareholders to take this vote on whether or not to diversify into Bitcoin. So we're going to read through it. I'm going to talk about some of the points, what I like, what I don't like from a long-term Bitcoiner perspective, and I guess a contrarian Bitcoiner perspective, because if you guys are finding my content for the first time, I am a long-time Bitcoiner, but I come from the deflation side of adoption and not from the inflation side. So obviously, he talks a lot about inflation in here, so I'm going to disagree with some of that. But all roads still lead to Bitcoin. And so that's what you get here on Bitcoin and Markets. I am live streaming on YouTube, Rumble, Twitter, and Telegram. Telegram is the main community, so you guys can head over there to take part in the chat throughout the day. If you're watching on Twitter, where most of the people are watching this, jump over to the YouTube, subscribe. Trying to grow those subscriber numbers just past 500. Next goal is 1,000. I thought it was going to be unlocked for like super chats and stuff at 500, but it doesn't get unlocked till 1,000. So got to push those subs over there on YouTube. I appreciate everyone that jumps over there and subscribes. It's also easier to like comment throughout this. If you want to call me out for something, if I say something wrong, if I misspeak, you can correct me there. If you have questions, you can do that very easily on YouTube during the live streams. And then I go back and do check all the comments later on and reply to the ones that aren't spam bots over on YouTube. So, okay, where are we going? Let's talk about this. Microsoft, it's the third largest company, right? Third largest company, and they have billions and billions of assets that they could diversify 1% into Bitcoin. And so let's read through this supporting statement. In periods of consistent and often rampant inflation, a company's financial standing is unfortunately measured not only by how well it conducts its business, but also by how well it stores the profits of its business. Corporations that invest their assets wisely can and often do increase shareholder value more than more profitable businesses that don't. Therefore, corporations have a fiduciary duty to maximize shareholder value not only by working to increase profits, but also by working to protect those profits from debasement. I'm very interested. Before this dropped this morning, I was getting my tires rotated on my car, and I'm waiting there in the waiting area, and I make this tweet about, hey, what's the likelihood of them following their fiduciary duty and adopting a Bitcoin on their balance sheet, and it's 0%. Uh, this is not probably going to happen, but we will see. Point made a good observation there on Telegram, saying that this probably wouldn't come up for a vote like this if it wasn't one of the large shareholders that brought it up. Of course, BlackRock is the second largest shareholder of Microsoft. They hold those shares for their clients, so it's not like Larry Fink owns whatever 7% of Microsoft, but it could be BlackRock, it could be a group of other large shareholders that want a vote on this. Very, very interesting seeing this happen right now when we have the ETFs approved earlier this year. Of course, we have the options approved, and now MicroStrategy has been making headlines for its great performance, and this comes up with Microsoft. But okay, let's read on. The average inflation rate in the US over the last 4 years, according to the CPI, which is a remarkably poor and corrupt measure of inflation, is 5.03%. Okay, first thing about this, I don't want to go into the mud on this, but 4 years, you're going to average CPI over 4 years. I don't even like doing a year over year. I like month over month CPI, maybe 3 months, 6 months, that we can talk about those types of numbers. Year over year is getting a little bit long in the tooth, because things that you measure in a year over year, they don't get priced in for so long, then they don't get priced out for so long. It's just a very slow moving thing. And if you take this out to 4 years, I mean, it's pretty much useless to average CPI over 4 years. The CFO, the people that, more, I would say, learned investment people that this is really talking about, because they're thinking about investing in Bitcoin. They're going to look at this 4-year average of CPI and just think this guy's crazy. This is kind of worthless to talk about 4 years of CPI. And then he goes, and this person, whoever has this supporting statement, called it corrupt. Okay. Now, it might be corrupt. I don't think it's remarkably poor. I would say it's not perfect. But when you start going down corrupt, then you start enabling people to discount you or disregard you because of conspiracy type language. Okay. And I'm not saying that it's not corrupt. I'm saying it's possible that it's corrupt, and it's likely that there's fudging going on to a certain degree. But once you start using that as in your reasoning, you start losing credibility, in my opinion. So anyway, let's keep reading. Peaking at 9.1% in June 2022. But in reality, the true inflation rate, okay, I mean, is he using truflation? Because truflation has been at like 1% for a year. So is he using the truflation rate? What's the true inflation rate? Who is this arbiter of truth that he's talking about? Is significantly higher than that? No, it's not, man. Just look at the price of oil. Just look at the price of oil. Look at the price of commodities. I mean, no commodity other than maybe gold, if you consider that a commodity. It's a precious metal, but no commodity right now that I'm aware of. There could be some agricultural stuff like cattle or something, but most of the big commodities are not over their 2008 high right now. So what the true inflation? Who's this arbiter of truth? Anyway, okay. In some studies estimating it is it to be nearly double the CPI at times. Okay. And he has a footnote here or whatever, and we can't see that, obviously. Maybe he's looking at shadow stats, and that would be a big, big hit against his credibility, because I don't know who would believe we've had 15% inflation for 20 years. And the price of a barrel of oil is still at $70. You have to be kind of loco to think that. So A corporation's assets have needed to appreciate at those rates over the last 4 years just to break even. Okay. A money market fund was yielding over 5%. So if the average inflation rate was 5.03, I mean, the thing is, once you go down this rabbit hole that he has gone down, this person making this supporting statement of saying remarkably poor and corrupt, you give these openings to people to dig away at your reasoning. Instead, you should just very simply come from a statistical thing saying Bitcoin has gone up by this much. It has outperformed this, da 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 da. But I mean, he does put that a little bit lower down. But now you just open this up to either making it's not really political, but it's ideological or conspiratorial. And that's not what I would say we want these people to be making this decision. I don't want people, my company that I'm a shareholder on, I don't want them making a decision based off of 4-year average CPI. So if you're talking about fiduciary duty and you come in here quoting 4-year average of CPI, I'm going to say, my fiduciary duty is not to look at the 4-year average of CPI. Get that out of here. Okay, as of March 31st, 2024, Microsoft has $484 billion in total assets, the plurality of which are U.S. government securities and corporate bonds that barely outpace inflation. Okay, if assuming that the CPI is accurate, which it isn't, he has that in here, which it isn't. So bond yields are actually lower than the true inflation rate. Okay, therefore, in inflationary times like these, we are not in inflationary times. The overriding pressure, now this, I come from a unique school of thought here. The overriding pressure is deflationary. At the end of a credit bubble, they're going to try to push more and more credit. They are going to push more and more credit. But that credit is less and less and less and less productive. So what happens? Eventually you reach a time where you add $1 in debt and you get zero growth out of it, And so is that inflationary? No, it's actually deflationary because you're having to pay back more debt with no additional growth from that debt. The debt burden outpaces the growth, which is what we have now. So the overriding force is towards liquidation. It's towards default. It's towards deflation. And crashing credit is deflation. All right, continue. And perhaps have corporations should and perhaps have a fiduciary duty to consider diversifying their balance sheets with assets that appreciate more than bonds, even if those assets are more volatile short term. As of June 2024, the price of Bitcoin increased by 99.7% over the previous year, outperforming corporate bonds by roughly 94% on average. Over the past 5 years, the price of Bitcoin increased by 414%, outperforming corporate bonds by roughly 411% on average. MicroStrategy, which, like Microsoft, is a technology company, but unlike Microsoft holds Bitcoin on its balance sheet, has had its stock outperform Microsoft stock this year by 313%, despite doing only a fraction of the business that Microsoft has. And they're not alone. The institutional and corporate adoption of Bitcoin is becoming more commonplace. Microsoft's second largest shareholder, BlackRock, offers its clients a Bitcoin ETF. Bitcoin is a more volatile asset at the moment than corporate bonds, so companies should not risk shareholder value by holding too much of it. However, as Bitcoin is an excellent, if not the best hedge against inflation, and corporate bond yields are less than the true inflation rate, companies should also not risk shareholder value by ignoring Bitcoin altogether. At minimum, companies should evaluate the benefits of holding some, even just 1% of its assets in Bitcoin. So he wrapped it up nicely there in the last, 3-4 paragraphs, but should not have even gotten into this stuff at the top because it just opens up the ability to disregard the entire thing. Okay, a lot of people will just look at this and be like, oh, remarkably poor, corrupt, that it's nearly double the actual CPI, and like they'll just tune out. They won't even entertain it. Okay, so that is what I have to say about this Microsoft supporting statement. Obviously, overall, it's a good deal for Microsoft. They should do it, but they're not going to be able to pursue the same strategy as MicroStrategy. But everybody should hold a little bit of Bitcoin on their balance sheet, just like they hold a little bit of cash. It is a cash position. It will become more and more a cash position as we go and volatility declines as Bitcoin rises. So, once Bitcoin gets to very high valuations, the volatility is going to be coming out of it because it's like the opposite of what people try to fearmonger about. So they try to fearmonger that, oh, it's just a gigantic bubble. And what do bubbles do? They actually increase in volatility. So like they have blow off top and they crash. Well, as we go in Bitcoin, each top is and drawdown, it's getting less and less. And it's going to continue to do that as it goes up. So it's going to get less volatile as it goes up. And eventually, when it's pretty much universally adopted, then it is going, at least as base money, then it will be very low volatility. So anyway, good opportunity for Microsoft, good opportunity for Bitcoin, and we'll probably be seeing a lot of these. I mean, if this is from BlackRock, we'll probably be seeing a lot of these types of votes coming up from large companies because BlackRock is one of the biggest shareholders. Vanguard is not. I looked up the shareholders yesterday for the guys on Telegram, and it was State Street, BlackRock. Vanguard was not like in the top 5. So this is one company that they're not one of the big shareholders. So very interesting. And Vanguard is anti-Bitcoin. So, all right. Let's go into Brics. So this was kind of hitting the wires yesterday. Brics unveiled their new currency. They're going to launch some currency. We've talked about this a lot on the show. And actually, before I do that, let me check in comments. No comments. If you're watching on YouTube or Rumble, put a comment down below. If you have any questions, comments, let me check in on Telegram and see. All right. Well, let's just continue here. Let me get the screen back right again. All right. So we've talked about the Brics currency a lot in the past here on the show. I'm not a worrywart about a Brics currency. I'm not a worrywart about the dollar dominance. I think the dollar dominance is fairly secure. What would it be replaced with? It would be replaced with this Brics currency. They don't even have like infrastructure behind this. There's no bonds, fiscal union of these countries to have some sort of centralized bonds that they can hold and create a complete sort of financial system the way we have it today. So the dollar is not a threat of being displaced by this Brics currency. Then you have to look at maybe the euro, but the euro has been diving in usage globally and in invoicing and all of that stuff, international payments. The one reason why it's there, maybe the volume of the euro is kind of pumped up because they have very close trade partners that are in Europe, but not in the European Union or in the Eurozone. And so that trade is added to the euro where it really shouldn't be. Just like when you look at the Chinese yuan, they count the international payments between Hong Kong and the mainland, which is kind of silly. Like, I guess, yes, the US counts Canada and Mexico, but that's not like Romania. I guess Romania is in the euro. I'm trying to think of another country that doesn't have the euro, but Norway or something. Norway and Sweden. Well, Sweden has their own currency. So let's just go Norway and France. So Norway and France do a lot of trading. That's a little bit closer to home than I would say the US and Mexico. Maybe that's not a good comparison, but I think it's slightly elevated by those types of things. Just look at Hong Kong and mainland China. But the dollar is not going to be replaced by the yuan, the renminbi. It's not going to be replaced by the yen. It's not going to be replaced by the euro. Some people say, oh, it's going to be replaced by gold. Okay, well, if it's going to be replaced by gold, now we can start talking about Bitcoin. Now we can bring Bitcoin into the conversation. I also think that this Brics thing is very interesting when it comes to Trump getting elected and the Bitcoin strategic reserve that they're trying to pass in the United States. So Trump is going to get elected. He's very friendly to Bitcoin. Brics is starting to launch this currency, maybe someday. And so it's just the timing. The timing is very interesting where Bitcoin should be in that conversation when you talk about what's going to replace the dollar. It doesn't have to be replaced either. Most people don't agree with this or understand this, but the dollar has been many things throughout its life. It hasn't always been just a credit-based dollar. It's been a silver dollar. It's been gold and silver. It's been just gold. It's been a different weight of gold. It's been illegal to own gold, but you still had gold in the bank internationally, could settle in gold. Now you have the credit-based dollar. So it's not a stretch of the imagination to think that we're just going to change that form of the dollar once again, right? And if we have a Bitcoin strategic reserve of, let's say, 500,000 Bitcoins, maybe they get up to 1,000,000. Maybe decide, hey, we want to buy 1,000,000, but we got to do it on the down low and whatever. So they buy 1,000,000 coins and then they revalue the dollar in Bitcoin. And they say, every dollar is worth 10 sats. That would be $10 million Bitcoin. And then they could take that and they could pay off some of their debt. So it would be kind of like a devaluation of the dollar. But right now, okay, this is interesting because a lot of people think that we're debasing the dollar right now, but we're not, because the dollar is based off debt. It's a dollar of debt. So you can't debase, if you print more money, it's still $1 in debt. Debasing is a term that I think has been corrupted. It used to be like if you went from 95% silver to 90% silver to 80% silver, that would be debasing. All right. But because there's something to debase against, you're debasing against the backing, right? When the US did the 6102 and it went from $20 to $35 an ounce, that was debasing because they debased against gold. There's nothing to debase against right now. So if you did a thing where you created a peg in Bitcoin, you would have to create that peg exceptionally high, because that would be the debasing effect. So let's say Bitcoin gets up to $1 million an ounce or $1 million a coin. That would be 100 sats per dollar. Okay. The debasing effect would be, okay, now the US would peg it at 10 sats a dollar. So they would get a 10x debasement effect off of the market price. Does that make sense? And that would be able to shift their debt down. So at that period, you don't want to be holding debt. But right now, it's good to be. It's interest rates are going to go back down, and so it's kind of bullish right now for those types of debts. But when that happens, when that becomes more and more likely to the market, you will see a rush into Bitcoin and all that stuff. So try to get away from the debt. But anyway, that is the Brics thing. I have an article here. We'll pull that up and read just a little bit of it. I didn't read this whole article, but this is from Zero Hedge. Brics Summit puts focus on dethroning US dollar as Putin unveils Brics banknote. So people have been just building this up for so long. It's kind of like people are just so obsessed with China, and they think China is like the next superpower. And I mean, they are, I guess, a superpower, but they're their next global hegemon and yada, yada, yada. But I had to debunk why they were about to go into major economic problems, and why the Thucydides trap is garbage, why the Belt and Road is garbage. And now that's exactly what's kind of playing out. And these people still are, they're the same type of people that think BRICS are a threat somehow to the US dollar. It's not a threat at all. But okay, let's get into this article a little bit. It's an outcome that alternative economists have long predicted and been sycophants. That, you know, they've wanted this for so long, not just predicted that it was inevitable, because they hate the dollar. They hate the United States. The dumping of the US dollar as the world reserve currency and the petrocurrency by the BRICS nations in favor of a new multi-currency system or basket system. This basket system will not work at all. You're taking a handful of dysfunctional monetary authorities. Okay. Not one BRICS country is like known for its sound central banking. You know what I mean? It's not like we're talking about the Bundesbank here. Or, I mean, even if you had the Bank of Japan, it's not known for this either. But the Bundesbank is kind of like the pinnacle of central banks in its fiscal responsibility. We're not talking about really great central banks. We're talking about a basket of basket cases. That's what we're talking about here. For decades, the dollar has reigned supreme as the most favored currency for international trade. At least they said it properly, most favored, because it's been selected. It's not like forced on anybody. Replacing the British pound sterling officially after the Bretton Woods Agreement in 1944. This status, along with the end of the gold standard, gave the Federal Reserve Bank the power to print cash with wild abandon without facing immediate inflationary consequences. Wrong. That is wrong, guys. The Federal Reserve does not print money. I mean, they print the banknotes, physical banknotes, and there's like $1 trillion of physical banknotes out there. But no, they do not print money with wild abandon. Even going back to the Great Depression, okay? One of the reasons why they had to do 6102, or they felt they had to do the 6102, is because they couldn't do this. They could not do this. So they had to debase it against gold. So this is just something that's got out of hand. There's like zero evidence for this. As long as the dollars are held overseas by foreign governments, banks, and corporations, inflation in the U.S. can be mitigated despite quantitative easing. Oh boy. If the dollar loses reserve status and the trillions of dollars stored in foreign markets flood back into the U.S., an inflationary disaster would result well beyond that America is already dealing with today. Okay, this is just, it's wrong as a conceptual framework. Okay, if the dollar starts to be not used as a global reserve currency or used less, the credit markets will shrink. And what is a dollar today? It's debt. So if the credit markets start to shrink, what does that do to the number of dollars? It collapses it. If this happened, if the US dollar was starting to be actually de-dollarized and trillions of dollars were trying to get back in the United States or something, the global credit markets would crash. All of these economies would go into depression, and the value of the dollar would shoot through the roof. It's just, these people have a totally wrong conceptual framework of this. Given this fact, oh my God, given this fact, it's not surprising that Vladimir Putin avidly discussed the potential of the new BRICS currency system during the Trade Coalition Summit this week in Kazan, Russia. He knows that the dollar's reserve status is America's strength, but also America's great weakness. Well, what I heard Putin say was that, hey, they didn't want to drop the dollar. I think his direct quote was very close to this. We didn't want to drop the dollar. The dollar dropped us. We were not able to use the dollar, so we have to try to go around it. See, they want to use the dollar. Everyone wants to use the dollar. It's a global reserve currency. They want to hold dollar reserves, treasuries. They can't. They're not de-dollarizing on purpose. They're because they weaken themselves if they do it. But anyway, Putin unveiled a symbolic Brics banknote at the summit, suggesting that the plan to dump the dollar may be much closer to fruition than many economists expect. Very unlikely. Again, it's a basket of basket cases. All right. Another central topic of the conference was the development of an alternative to the SWIFT payment system. We've been hearing about this for a decade or more. The SWIFT system is the most efficient mechanism for governments and international banks to transfer large sums of money from one country to another. No, it's not. The Bitcoin is the most efficient mechanism for this, but they don't use it. Russia was banned from using SWIFT after their invasion of Ukraine, which many Western analysts claimed would destroy Russia's economy. This did not happen. Well, yeah, because they still can use SWIFT. There's a few banks in Russia that can use it. There's also like foreign banks within Russia that can use it. NATO sanctions ended up pushing the BRICS closer together, with China and India greatly increasing trade with Russia and China, forming a more defined military ties with the Kremlin. Every plan to replace the dollar has revolved around the concept of central bank digital currencies. This tells you how little possibility there is that this happens, because it's been talked about for so long. Then all of a sudden, about 3, 4, 5 years ago, CBDCs coming onto the picture. Now all of a sudden, that is what's going to be used. Okay, so they had no idea for 10 years. Then this idea of CBDC comes around, and now they have an idea all of a sudden. No, it's still the same problems that they've had all along. Okay. To circumvent the dollar's reserve advantage while also defeating the monopoly of the SWIFT network. They can use Bitcoin. There is also a Chinese alternative already. The problem with the Chinese alternative is the Chinese. Okay. It's the Chinese banks and their regulations and the capital controls. Okay. Basket of basket cases. The BRICS are also not the only entity working on such a plan. Ooh, so scary. Globalist bankers in both the IMF and the BIS have been developing digital alternatives to the dollar system for years, with the BIS already testing CBDCs in multiple countries, including Australia, Saudi Arabia, and China, with the intent to introduce a cashless economy in the next 2 years. It's always 2 years away. In other words, the naysayers that claim the dollar will not be replaced as the world reserve for many decades to come are delusional. The process is already well underway. Yeah, just like the process of the Greenland ice sheet melting, ice free by 2012, right? We're all going to die in 5 years. This has been going on for 20 years or so, maybe 15 years, and they're no closer. They're no closer. They're doing tests. Everywhere CBDC has been tried, it's failed miserably. It's not popular with the people. It won't be adopted without draconian imposition of the CBDC on the public. And guess what? I don't think China is going to want to be dependent on India having some sort of access to the CBDC or control over the CBDC. No way. These countries are much more natural enemies than they're natural allies. Okay, so that is the BRICS stuff. Let me check the comments. I went off on them. 174 people watching, guys. Make your comments down below. Let me see on Telegram here. All right. No comments there on Telegram either. So let's jump into the next topic. What did I want to touch on? We did Microsoft, Brics, and now Tether FUD. So let's look at that. So this hit the wire that Tether was the U.S. Um, Department of Justice or somebody is looking into Tether, and that's when the price did dip a couple $100 today. We'll take a look at the live chart here in a minute. But Paul Arduino, he came on. He is the CEO of Tether and maybe of Bitfinex as well. I'm not sure if he's still there, but he said that the Wall Street Journal, we told them we have no indication that we're under investigation and that this is coming from an old story. So the Wall Street Journal still ran with it. So are they under investigation? Again, a lot of FUD is coming out about this. Of course, Tether has lived through all of this FUD before, and nothing has ever come out to be legit. And I have not been a FUDster. There's a lot of FUD, like I would say, from the gold bug and silver bug communities. They love, this is their favorite. This is their favorite conspiracy, is that Tether is completely unbacked and they're just printing dollars and buying Bitcoin. And that's why Bitcoin bubble, it has not imploded yet. That's their favorite thing to explain Bitcoin, is that Tether is fake. But no, we know that Tether is out there buying a ton of treasuries. And we have this post here from James Van Straten. And he says Tether is the third biggest buyer of 3-month treasuries and the 16th buyer of U.S. debt globally. They're the 16th largest buyer of U.S. debt globally. They're not unbacked, people. This is just complete scam. And that this is going to blow over like everything else always does. I had a tweet here. Let's see if I can find this tweet. So there's us. Okay. So here's this Jacob King, and we don't know who this is, but he has 500,000 followers all of a sudden, and he doesn't get a lot of interaction on his tweets. So people are saying that this was a bot account, or this was, something strange going on with this account. But he says Tether is screwed, and that just sounds so much like 2020. Okay, we've lived through all of this before. Oh, and he also says that imagine what happens when they shut Tether down and Bitcoin is, goes, because there's no volume remaining that's not Tether volume. So it's going to drop to $27 or whatever he says here. And I say the exact opposite would happen. Billions would flow out of Tether and into Bitcoin if the rumors were true. So we know that's not the case, because the price of Bitcoin will not fall. If this is true, the price of Bitcoin will rise, because all these people that, if this rumor were real, they would be going and buying Bitcoin and getting out of Tether. They wouldn't be going back. I mean, maybe they would go to USDC. Maybe they would go to actual dollars or something. But I think most likely these people want to keep their money in the Bitcoin ecosystem. And the best way to do that is to buy Bitcoin. They probably have a lot of trades going on too. They need to be here, and they can hold Bitcoin versus going back to regular dollars. And so they would be fleeing into the dollar. And he says that this makes no sense. I just say straight out of 2020, short Bitcoin then. And then Naveed here makes a great observation. He's like, hey, who is this? 500,000 followers, 500 tweets. What's going on here? So anyway, that's the type of FUD that Tether has to suffer. A lot of this FUD is going to be XRP financed. Remember, XRP worked with FTX and tried to crash Tether by dumping like $2 billion worth of Tether all at once. And they were able to meet that. I think that USDC and Circle and Jeremy Allaire, in my opinion, I think it's highly likely that they have something to do with all of this FUD over the years, because they're the competitors. Jeremy Allaire of Circle, he famously rage quit Bitcoin, said Bitcoin failed and left. Then he came back a few years later with Circle and USDC. And that was also right around the time that all this Tether FUD started. So I think there's a lot to be said there, that these people are working. Oh, wait, actually, it was Circle and FTX. It was not XRP. It was not XRP, so I take that back. But yeah, Circle and FTX, everyone tries to crash Tether, and it never happens. So that's it. All right, let's take a look at the charts to end up our Friday here. So Bitcoin on the day, let me make sure this is on the right one here. So Bitcoin on the day down a little bit, 66,769. I thought this would close higher towards the top after this FUD was kind of, vetted and debunked is the word I'm looking for. But that hasn't happened. But we'll see. We just keep pressing up against this trend line. If we zoom out, we can see where that trend line comes from. It's the very last possible from this consolidation period, and all-time high is very, very, very close once we break this. So breaking out of this trend line up to an all-time high is only 6%. That can happen in a single day in Bitcoin. So whenever this does break, I thought it was going to break last week. I thought it was going to break this week. Whenever it does break, there's a ton of liquidations up there, and you will not be able to stop the price before it gets to an all-time high. Now, can we do that before the U.S. election? I still think that's the base case, that we get back to the all-time high by the election, and then we go from there. This is one of those things, like, it's hard to see a little bit past the election because there's so much that could happen. And so it's kind of like when the ETFs launched, it was really hard to see past that kind of singularity of the ETF launch because it could be so much that could happen. And this is a very similar situation that, what if there's still 11 days? Anything could happen in that period of time. Not like legitimate, like if they were honest brokers here and everyone was acting in good faith, and Trump would win. He's already leading in many of the early voting, which is highly, highly unusual. And so most likely he's on his path to victory, but there could be other things to stop that from even occurring. And that uncertainty could trail off into November. What is going to happen? They spent all this time fighting him. Are they going to just let him win? Or are they going to try to pull something on January 6th themselves? We don't know. But so this U.S. election is a kind of a singularity that it's hard to really see past. But I do think base case is hitting that all-time high before the election. And then we move into November. So November, also, I mentioned this on Telegram before we went live, ETF options likely coming early November. We don't have a specific date for them yet, but the things I read was saying that there is a several week here process of getting all the mechanics and the legals filed and worked out, and then they will be launching sometime early November at the earliest. I mean, it could go into late November, but we're going into November. We have Microsoft with their meeting coming up. We have the ETF options. We have all of the flows into the ETFs. It's just and the uncertainty from the election will be pared back. So really looking bullish for after the election, but at the same time, it's hard to see exactly what happens up until that time. So, okay, that is where I'm going to leave it for today. Let me check finally if there are any comments. Dex Invictus back with us. What's up, man? All right. So Friday, hope you guys have plans for Friday night and the weekend with friends and family. I'm not talking like going out plans. I'm talking like with friends and family. Spend time with people that you love, building relationships, learning a new skill, things like that. And I will see you guys on the next one. Bye.